think that there's a way out of this by getting government to pass laws especially to benefit the blacks, you're kidding yourself. That isn't going to happen. I want to read to you something which I wrote close to 20 years ago, which was published about 18 years ago in a book called Capitalism and Freedom, in which I was discussing the relation between capitalism and discrimination. And I wrote, and I quote, FEPC legislation, Fair Employment Practices Commission legislation, involves the acceptance of a principle that proponents would find abhorrent in almost every other application. If it is appropriate for the state to say that individuals may not discriminate in employment because of color or race or religion, then it is equally appropriate for the state, provided a majority can be found to vote that way, to say that individuals must discriminate in employment on the basis of color, race, or religion. Now, you will all recognize that that is exactly what has happened in the interim, as you have moved from the idea of non-discrimination to the idea of affirmative action. Temporarily, that affirmative action may benefit some blacks, some low-income people. But if you believe that Supreme Court decisions are going to be able to stop a majority of the population which is prejudiced from using this power to benefit themselves rather than the people who are disadvantaged, you're kidding yourself. That's not the way out. What is the way out? I think the way out is a very different one from the part of all of those who are interested in the people who are disadvantaged in our society. There are black problems that are peculiar to the black community, just as there are Jewish problems that are peculiar to the Jewish community, Baptist problems that are peculiar to the Baptist community. But those problems are problems that should be worked on by these communities among their own people by themselves through voluntary activities. And I think the only way we can make progress is by recognizing that from the point of view of political tactics, the only problems we have to deal with are human problems.
Yeah, so I think what he was getting at in that first point is that initial law that was passed was essentially saying that you cannot discriminate, for employment or whatever based upon, immutable characteristics. Okay. And then he said, well, if it's pretty interesting, that's exactly what happened. Once that law gets passed saying that you can't do that, now people say that you can do that. And what that is ultimately that is affirmative action. That's what affirmative action is. People have the notion that no, it's bringing poor minorities up. It's not really bringing them up. That's not what it's doing. It's bringing non-minorities down. So there's still 100 spots. Let's say there's still 100 spots in the school X, whatever that is, right? But now they can't accept these other individuals that may be white or Asian, as the Supreme Court case for the Asian students, which is why we're kind of moving out of this stuff now, because we realize what's been going on, that in order to try to fix past discrimination, we're discriminating now against kids that were working really, really hard and doing all the right things, and they didn't get the advantage because they weren't the right skin color. That's what we were doing. It's crazy. So, you have all these individuals that worked so hard, and like I said, because of the wrong skin color, they can't get the spot. They can't get the position. And it's just wrong. And I try to sit down with people and talk to them that haven't really looked at it yet, because like I said, on a surface level, it kind of almost feels good, right? It feels virtuous. You're saying this person, this poor minority, let's lift them up, right? Okay, let's lift them up. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, I tell you what it means. It means on the whole that if pick your university, you have to get, let's say you had to get a 1,500 on the SATs to get there. If you were an Asian, maybe you had to get a 1,550. And if you were a minority, Spanish or black, then maybe you have to get a 1,400. That's not lifting them up. That's not lifting them up. The reason why it's not lifting them up is because, as illustrated so well by Thomas Sowell, you're putting, and I think Freidman as well, you're putting these kids in a situation that they are not, they're not at the level of the other people, right? We're talking about college institutions at this point. I'm not talking about the workforce yet. In terms of college, you are exposing them to a university where you have these elite children that are at this level, right? I don't know if I should be using my hands, but you have these elite children that are at this level. And these other minority kids, because of affirmative action, they're coming in here. And what ends up happening is a lot of times, right, that where maybe this group of kids, maybe they shouldn't have went to Harvard or Yale or whatever. They could have easily gone to a suitable university where the standards are equal to what they have, right? So then the student body is this. It's cohesive. You're going to have some people here, but the majority of the student body is a representative in terms of intellect and in terms of skill, in terms of what they can bring to the student body. Whereas when you go to these outlier schools where they're super high level, let's be honest, the Asian culture, as far as like the Asian culture that goes to school, because there are many Asian cultures that, they're, like I said, Solis talked about this at length. They are highly disciplined in terms of their schooling education, and it is very important to them as a culture. Depending upon which Asian group I said you're talking about. But they dominate or had dominated these institutions of higher learning for decades. And now you bring in, I don't know, a Spanish kid that is not at that level. What ends up happening is he's now that he's there, he has to compete with these guys, or the school has to bring the level down, right? Why would we want to do that? No, this is the level of the school. The level is here. And you have to fit in that grouping in order to be part of that university. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And then what ends up happening is that poor minority ends up being jaded. He ends up maybe thinking there's a racial component because look around me, all these white kids and Asian kids, they're breezing through. Are they getting extra help or whatever? But at the end of the day, it's much more difficult for them to compete because it's just an arbitrary reason that they're there, right? They shouldn't be there. I guarantee you there are, blacks and Hispanics that meet that threshold. And maybe it's a super small percentage, but you know what? That's the percentage that should be there. Whatever that is. It has to be based on merit. Has to. You're talking about our future doctors, our future engineers. And no one is saying that you can't find a university that suits your academic level. I'm sure you can. If you really want to go to college and you worked really hard, you'll find a school that suits you. It just might not be MIT, right? It's crazy for me to say it, but like you shouldn't be at, one of the top schools of science if your merit doesn't show that you have the capability of being there. You want top tier in order to produce top tier. So, yeah. I mean, I think I talk about this quite a bit, but guys, thank you so much for coming out. Give me a like, give me a share, give me a subscribe. I'm trying to grow this thing. It's pretty awesome. Having a lot of fun doing it. I hope I illustrate that and it comes across in the camera. But yeah, we'll talk real soon. Thanks a lot, guys.